I'm gonna want that. Okay.
Test.
Oh. Cool. You got on? Hello. Oh, hello. Oh, where should I hold it? About here. Okay, that works. Okay. Good evening, everybody. Okay. Thank you very much for coming, everybody. Everybody here in Edinburgh and also everybody in Glasgow. Don't know if you can see or hear or anything. Can you hear us and everything?
They're nodding their head.
Yeah. We'll take their silence as a yes. Okay. If they can't, it's being recorded. So we also got Alan from Product Forge here, who will be doing the streaming, along with Skyscanner's Zoom account, but also they are recording for to put on YouTube. Thank you. Yes, exactly that. Okie dokie. So tonight we're going to do a bit of networking. We have done that. We have eaten the pizza. Yes. Okay.
Don't stand underneath the speakers.
We've done the pizza. We've drank the beer. So I'm just going to do a quick welcome, a bit about why this community, a bit about why we've put it together, a little bit for any newcomers. I've seen when we were getting the notifications for Meetup, there were a lot of first timers, both in Edinburgh and Glasgow. Whether that was first timers to any of the meetups hosted by Scaling Agile and DevOps Scotland, or whether it was people new to Agile itself or Agile communities, lots of first timers. So thank you for joining. Very exciting and grateful for you to be here. So we've done a bit of a Heart of Agile takeover for this Scaling Agile session. And we have Tony Christensen, who will be speaking at about 7:15. Agile cults and religions don't join one, with a refocus on Heart of Agile. So it's going to be a very entertaining talk. We'll also then take a quick break after some questions and then lead into a bit of an exploration, a bit of a breakout session. We also have Andy at the back doing graphic recording. I've remembered it. So he's going to be taking notes from the evening in pictorial form. So I'm looking forward to the outcome of that. It should be pretty awesome. So a quick bit of kind of why this. So a few months back, Alistair Coburn, who is, forgive me for the nomenclature, movement leader or creator or developer or explorer of Heart of Agile, he came to Edinburgh. And I was fortunate enough to go on a 2-day course that he was hosting, all about Heart of Agile. It's something I'd heard about before, but never necessarily fully understood. And went on this course. And at the time, I was in a bit of a grump with Agile. I was with a team that I wasn't really enjoying, and I think that kind of put me in a bad place, and I kind of forgot what I was doing and why I was doing it. So I went on this course and then came out, real breath of fresh air, really kind of reinvigorated my understanding and want for being someone in the Agile space. So part of Heart of Agile, I'm sure Tony will go into part of this, is that Alistair himself had got kind of bothered with the over-decoration of Agile. A lot of these frameworks becoming kind of a standard that people followed, but it was kind of maybe they were being done wrong, or maybe they were being done to a point where they were becoming a process over the individuals and interactions that were happening ahead of them. So what it is, it's effectively a distilled version of the Agile Manifesto. So Alistair was one of the original signatories of the Agile Manifesto, and distilled down the 4 value statements and 12 principles into the 4 words: collaborate, deliver, reflect, and improve. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight and what this community is going to be about. So he also came back to Edinburgh about a month ago and did another talk, a few talks actually, through at RBS when they were holding their Agile Fest conference. Thank you, Lucy. And there were a few of us there that really kind of enjoyed what he was talking about and really wanted to take it a bit further. We wanted to know how we could do that. So we got in touch with him and we spent a bit of time understanding how we could go about building a community around Heart of Agile, and not just kind of having regular meetups, but actually building a proper community of people that care about something and want to discuss things outside of a room once a month, and how we can explore further and help each other with different aspects. From that, he got us in touch with people in communities across the globe. There are a few active at the moment, and in particular with one in Melbourne, And a couple of weeks ago, I spent some time with Damon from the Melbourne Heart of Agile group, and we discussed kind of how they built their community, what it was all about, and how they went about doing it. And one of the really interesting things that he said was that a lot of the communities he had been to, he felt like it was much of a one-way transaction. You'd go, you'd hear a talk, you'd enjoy it, you'd leave. You'd come back a few weeks later. Maybe you've done something with something that was said in that talk, maybe you didn't. But you'd come back to the next meetup, and then there's another talk. And you'd never talk about that talk that was talked about before. So he wanted to change that and kind of build in these feedback loops that we do so enjoy in the Agile space. And instead of having speakers come and do talking and that was it, and then have another one 4 weeks later, 6 weeks later, he thought, how about we get the community involved and get them speaking? Get people coming and talking about experiments they've been trying, or a new way of collaborating that they've been using, or something that they've delivered that they're really proud of, or something that went really wrong, and just having come and do a 5-minute, 10-minute piece of talk. But then he found that it wasn't really happening. And to understand why, could I just get everyone quickly to stand up, please? Thank you. I can't see if you're standing up in Glasgow, but I'm assuming that you are. Okay. Please may I ask you to stay standing if you know more than one person in this room other than the people that you came with. Okay, couple sitting down. Stay standing if you know more than 2 people other than the people that you came with. More than 3 people? 4? 5? 10? 50? Okay. So what he realized was they weren't necessarily a community in the place that he'd been going, rather than a group of like-minded people in a room at the same time that didn't know each other. And because of that, maybe there wasn't the safety, the psychological safety available to them or felt by them to get in front of people and speak to them about something that went wrong, or something that they really are passionate about, or something that they care about, or something that they want to try, or maybe they're worried about saying something silly in front of a bunch of people. So he really wanted to get people to know each other. And that's what we're going to do for the first bit tonight. Again, I'd like you to stand up, please, if you don't mind. And find someone that you don't know and talk to them. Say hello, have a little chat, see what they do. Okay, thank you. 2 things. 1, did you just meet someone new? Yeah, good. 2, I'm going to teach you about this. So this is a technique we use in Agile circles and other places too. But and basically, if we're in a large room of people and it's quite loud, it's quite hard to get everyone's attention. So if you see a hand up, you pop your hand up, and at that time you stop speaking. And then you look around like, what's going on? And eventually there will be someone there going, cool, thanks guys, I'll continue speaking. So it's a really effective way of kind of quietening a room. So thank you very much. Please, can you stay standing and find someone else and speak with them? Thank you. How much quicker was that? So it's quite a powerful thing, right? And did we get to meet someone else new? Yeah. Okay, cool. So we've met at least like 2 new people, maybe more. Okay. So the next part I want to talk about, you can take a seat now, sorry. Thank you very much. You're welcome. Yeah. Okie dokie. So the next thing I want to talk about, we now know a few people, we're a bit comfortable, bit awake, bit everything. I'd like to talk about community. But first off, I'd like to ask, what does community mean to you guys? Feel free to just shout out anything about community. What does community mean to you?
Having something in common.
Having something in common, thank you.
Shared values.
Shared values, lovely.
Helping each other.
Helping each other.
People you know.
People you know.
Emergent.
Emergent. Thank you, Martin.
Can you hear us?
We can hear you. Go for it.
All right.
Tell them to mute their MacBook.
Mute.
On my neighbor's door and asked for an onion because I ran out of one.
Yeah. Can you mute the MacBook through there? I think it's. But I love the one about the onion.
Thank goodness for the Zoom.
Okay. Any more from Glasgow?
Yeah. Could you mute that completely? Well,
Just for clarity, the Zoom was working perfectly. We had an audio issue in the room in Glasgow, so they're on a Mac.
and you know if you got
That's better.
that? Yeah. Yeah. Right. We're going to turn you on again. And I'll you do the mute button there and I'll this one. This is good fun.
Okay, go ahead now. That sounds good.
Network support.
Network support.
Network support. Thank you.
That was scary, Scott.
Hi everyone. Nice to see you.
Phone round.
Turn your phone round.
Turn your phone round.
Turn your phone around. Oh, you dressed up?
No,
Thank you.
landscape, dude. Landscape.
Okay. Any hoosers. Moving on. Oh, Monica, you look lovely. Okay. So thank you for everyone that popped out with putting the thought on community there. So I've taken a definition off the internet. I found it deep in the internet, so it worked for this talk. But what the definition I found was that a community is a self-organized network of people with common agenda, cause or interest who collaborate by sharing ideas, information and other resources. Virtual communities consist of participants in online discussions on topics of mutual concern. And that's really what we want to kind of build here and create. We don't want to have just a group of people that meet every now and then about something that maybe they have in common but don't really talk about it. We want to build something that people can actually share with each other, and not just one person to many, but many to many and one to the other. And even having these virtual communities. So there is a Slack workspace which has been set up for this purpose so people can share ideas.
Woo!
Thank you. Okie dokie. So I'm quite good at making up time because I usually speak quite fast. So I will now pass it on to Tony. Tony is currently the head of Agile and DevOps at RBS. But tonight he's here because he was one of the first few. He was actually the second person to be taken on as a Heart of Agile consultant by Alistair. And so he's here tonight on that side. So Tony, please come down. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Is the microphone working? Yeah. Excellent.
Cheers. You may need to start your presentation.
We'll just do
Oh,
the
yeah.
technical part.
Super tech.
I need to drop my ownership.
Oh, please.
Thank you for taking the time to come out to the event. It's either an out of curiosity or you had nothing better to do tonight. So thank you very much. I have a mic on.
I need to give you a separate one.
I need another mic.
Yeah.
Okay. Just pop that back there if you dare. Woo. Thank you. That's the wrong screen.
That's your sort display. I don't know. You've got. Where's your?
In the show.
Yeah, try that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. How's that? Can Glasgow see that?
I think
That's not.
I think you've got speaker view, haven't you? Can you do like duplicate displays rather than you've got it on extend desktop rather than duplicate?
All right.
Everyone has to do that on a Mac. I'm a PC person. On a PC, it's Windows P and it's done.
Yeah.
Is it the same on Mac?
Who knows?
How about I just share the presentation?
No. It's because you've got it's duplicate. There'll be a hotkey somewhere. Do you know what it is, Martin?
Yes. Well,
It's not Zoom.
no, it's the settings app I'm looking for. Which this doesn't have F4 anymore, but
And Zoom is hiding it, so get rid of just. Yeah,
Stop
just
the
do that. Yeah, get rid of that.
no, that one.
Yeah, mirror.
Mirror, that's it.
Mirror, yeah.
Oh, it's already on there.
Right. Okay, in which case now you should be able to do,
Desktop one.
share that one. And so that,
You don't want to share your audio. It doesn't matter.
and now
Play.
We don't
Have you got that?
It's the green.
This is Rob says. That'll be fun.
What's it doing?
it's Zoom not seeing the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
It should be Command F1, but I don't know what the deal is when you don't have the F keys.
So not the desktop, but
Just share the whole. No, just share the whole desktop. That should be.
that's what we were doing. It
What
wasn't
you're
working.
doing. Oh, okay.
So share that.
Cancel. We don't need that.
Yeah.
It was working, wasn't it?
And now, slow. Yeah.
It was.
Still not showing all of it. It's a Zoom thing, I think, not a PowerPoint thing.
Yeah. It was. Hang on. If we play from start, I think we do that. I'm going to do this then because on my machine, you can do the share afterwards.
Do advanced.
Advanced?
Yeah.
Always go advanced. Portion of screen.
So that's the problem is at the
That's what
moment.
it's doing. Computer sound area content.
Right, so perhaps if we,
I reckon desktop.
but it's still doing,
Hang on.
still doing only part of the screen is the problem.
That's going to do that whole application. There we go.
We've got something.
Oh, okay.
I think you're running.
Yeah.
Okay.
How's the Windows guys?
Have you got that now?
Yeah.
You've still got speaker view.
Have you got it on mirrored the displays rather than...
I thought we did.
Yes, we mirrored the displays.
Turn it in the show.
I don't know. Okay, so. Why is that doing that? No idea. This is just. Have you ever seen Zoom do that?
I've never seen a weight symbol on my Mac ever.
I've actually got something, I'm seeing something different
Completely
again.
different,
Yeah.
Okay.
The thing is, they could still, if Zoom is also something going on with your AV setup in here, you'd actually probably turn Zoom off on this.
Yeah.
You would still get the sound from them in the room, and then they could watch the live stream, because they'll get the slide feed.
Yeah. But then we need to get this onto there.
That
And
would
you're
still-
using.
No, I'm splitting it. So your projector's plugged in here. So if you switched on to HDMI on your projector, you get the screen.
How do that?
And that's what I'm seeing right
That's
now.
what you're seeing?
Yeah,
And then we can go
Kill the zoom.
over here and hit displays again. Here we go. Bring that back over here. Where's your mouse gone? That's all. Okay. You're okay now. Hey, Glasgow, can you use the YouTube link for the sharing? We'll just use that, we'll just use the streaming. I don't know if you can hear me. You're starting back on time with this, right?
It'll be fine.
Okay, got it. YouTube link. Glasgow, I've just sent you the YouTube link on Slack. Can you see them?
I can see them there. Scott not answering?
No.
Given that's Monica's phone that Scott's got, shall we
Well,
call Monica?
that's why I've just done this.
Okay.
Sorry. Hang on.
Did you want to put our camera back on?
Leave that.
Okay, I think we've got the technical problem solved. Thanks to the great assistance at both ends. So I just want to confirm we've got both audio and video going on in Glasgow.
You're not going to hear from them, but they've said they have.
Okay, excellent. So there we go. Excellent. So just a really brief introduction to myself. That cartoon was actually drawn at a similar event. It was actually at a ThoughtWorks event in Melbourne some years ago. And I thought it was actually a really clever thing to do. They asked you what was your favourite thing and pastime, and so they would then put your face in the picture in your favourite thing and pastime. And for any of you that arrived later than I did, you'll see that at the top of the walkway there, just off to the left, is my Harley Davidson that's depicted in the picture there. My wife often says it's actually probably my first love. The truth is, I don't think I would have a wife if I didn't have that bike, because I took her out on our first date on it. So I am for my sins, I am the head of the Agile and DevOps COE at Royal Bank of Scotland. For the last 3 years I've been there. I came across to join the organisation to help them corral their best efforts at the time towards something that would achieve an accelerated, better way of working at the Bank of Scotland, Royal Bank of Scotland. And so the reference to being the head of the Strategy Solutions Office there is the work that we've done to construct the organisational redesign and all of the things that enable Agile teams to then operate. I've been the strategist around how to do that, the key areas of focus, and that is what has now led to one of those COEs being the Agile and DevOps COE. The reason why I constructed this talk is because I sat back at one point a couple of years back and started to notice what I thought was essentially infighting in a broader Agile community that I couldn't understand. And the more that I sat back and thought about this, the more I thought about how paralleled Agile and the movement of Agile was becoming to what I understand is analogous to religion, in that there are many parallels from having common origins, but then becoming fractured into different groups and different sects and different factions of religion. And so that's what essentially inspired this talk. When I started in technology, there's a little 19-year-old me with hair. I think I was dressed up to take my girlfriend at the time off to her debutante ball. Life was a lot simpler. I joined the Australian National Line shipping company as a mainframe computer operator. It was a period where companies actually had a formal path into the organisation as an apprentice or as a They essentially would take on a graduate at the same time as someone straight off the street, and they would pair you up and you would then progress through your career together. It was actually a really interesting model. And so I started off mounting mag tapes on mainframe computers, and in fact that was the best picture I could find of a typical computer that I worked on, which was the fake-on mainframes. And I should have brought a clicker because this is going to get a bit monotonous walking backwards and forwards around the podium here. Back then, business was simpler. We had a head of finance at Australian National Line, and the head of finance, he was the only one that could afford a computer, because of course mainframes were extremely multi-million-dollar pieces of equipment there. They also had a very real need, which was, you can imagine businesses that were of a certain size that were keeping manual books and ledgers, that it was an incredibly manually intensive thing to, make payments, to transfer money from one department to another and so on. And so what was simple about life then was, when I became a programmer, one of my tasks was to automate some of the reporting. And we had a very close working relationship. The head of finance was literally only 20 feet away. He would come and explain to me what it was that he wanted done. He would show me his manual reports, and I would then mock up something, show it back to him later on, a couple of hours later, and he would give me course correction of some description. I would then code that. We would have daily conversations. I would demonstrate my working software to him, and I would also be the only one who, if the program went wrong, because it would typically run overnight, I would get the phone call. And so I would fix my work, and it was actually a great incentive. At the time we had no way to dial in, so you got in your car and you drove in. So if you got woken up at 3 in the morning for a support call, you got up and you went in. And so many of the things that we recognise as the core attributes of Agile working practices today was the only way we worked then. But then life became more complicated. Businesses became more complicated. After the head of finance decided that he was able to reduce the number of bookkeepers that he had, because he now automated this, so too did other business heads say, well, if you can do that, what can I use the computer to do for me? And so businesses became more complicated as they expanded, but also their consumption of technology became more complicated. And it meant that a single developer, a single individual, could no longer understand all of the different parts of technology. And as a result, we then find that the organisations then looked for, how can we structure some sort of method or process around software development? And does anybody recognise who this person is? One hand in the room? A couple of hands in the room? You don't recognise the picture? No, it's probably one of the rare ones. Kylie, would you like to tell us who Dr. Winston Royce was?
He wrote the paper talking about the concept of waterfall.
That's right, thank you. Unprompted, thank you very much. So he was the chap who is attributed to having written the paper that led to what we now know as the waterfall process. What's interesting about that, for those of you that want to go and look at it, I've got a copy here if you want. You can Google a PDF of it if you like, or there's a link there if you want to go and take a look at it. The first page of that document describes what we understand now to be the waterfall method, but then as you flip past the first page, it then describes how you wouldn't ever build complicated systems that way. And he then goes on for the next 6 pages describing the iteration loops of the different phases, etc. But unfortunately, it would appear that historically the methodologists grabbed the first page and ran with that, and so that's what then turned into what we now know today as the waterfall processes and the project management methodologies that we have. But what it did was it started to introduce additional roles that separated developers from key stakeholders. We started to find that we needed to specialise with people that understood how to gather requirements and write them down, and we also needed people that would actually organise teams and work into projects and programs. And so things became a lot more complicated, and it, as a result, ended up meaning that we have technology architectures that look a little like that, which if any of you have worked in large organisations, you've probably, if you dared to, gone and taken a look at what the technology architecture looks like, and it looks as complicated, if not more so, than this illustration. So I thought I'd go and sort of verify a couple of things by looking at the history of project management, and what I found was that there are these points in time where you can see that we've moved from early project management techniques to, we have the Project Management Institute starting to institutionalise the profession of project management. We then start to see the kickback in industry where somewhere around, I can't read it off my screen, the Scrum organisation starts to appear here, which is part of our broader community that's had an adverse reaction to the complexity that had started to introduce itself. And so this really does affirm the fact that the reason why our industry is starting to focus on how to simplify what we do is largely because we became so complex and we actually institutionalized the complexity that we're now driving towards simplicity, which is why Agile exists, and it's also why I associated myself to the heart of Agile, because it's to simplify where we're going. So it's obvious that people were looking to see if it could be simpler. I love using this slide. One of the chaps that works with me showed me this picture once, and I use it in virtually every deck now. So if you ever see my presentations, that's one of my signature things. So, of course, for those of you that are not new to Agile, we know that in 2001, 17 people got together. These are the original photographs, by the way, or at least copies of the original photographs. Alistair was kind enough to dig them up out of his archives and share them. But this was where 17 of those people who had been working on how to simplify the software delivery process got together, and whilst they couldn't, of course, agree on what was the actual method or technique, they did agree on the values and principles, which is why we now have the Manifesto for Agile Software. I know Martin Fowler. He describes the situation as do all of the 17, that they were really looking for better ways of working, and so that's where the manifesto came from. Dave Thomas, of course, was also one of those contributors, and we then get the manifesto. Now, when I pulled, this is one of the many timelines that you'll be able to find if you go researching this, and rather than try and create, I reuse as much as I can, but you can see the progression of what happened prior to the complexity and project management complexity coming in, the lean movement, the things that we then are foundational practices that have led to some of the key practices that is trying to simplify software delivery, etc. But now we're starting to see, beyond that, even more complex techniques and frameworks starting to appear. The discipline Agile delivery approach that Scott Amber wrote for IBM. You see Dean Leffingwell's scaled Agile framework start to appear. And then you see the scaled Scrum and Nexus, and there are other variants that are coming into the community every year. So Agile is essentially becoming codified in so many ways that, and I love borrowing this this depiction as well, because it essentially illustrates the point. The landscape is becoming so large of all the different techniques and practices and frameworks there that it's quite mind-numbing for people, for organisations. When I go talk in RBS about why do we need an Agile COE, because lots of consultancies have come in and sold our executive the story that all we need in our 15,000 person technology group is to learn Scrum and we'll be away. We'll just assemble small 8 to 10 man teams and give them a product owner and a Scrum Master and they will conquer the world. The reality is that in a simplified situation, that's true. In complex organisations, it's not true. And so part of trying to unbundle that and let it make sense to organisations is an appreciation that the industry has codified all these different techniques and practices to the point that it's no longer as simple as the 4 values and the 12 principles. It's becoming highly complex to understand. So the tools landscape, similarly, now this is a very small subset of the tools landscape, but it's ever increasing. If you ever go and take a look at the periodic table for tools, it keeps getting refreshed all the time. And so things are getting far, far more complicated. But as I mentioned, along this journey in the last couple of years, I've noticed that some of our thought leaders in the community are fighting with each other. And they're fighting with each other publicly, even to the point that some of them are actually saying Agile is dead. And by dead, it's not that Agile, capital A, is dead. What is being described is that the essence of what Agile was about no longer means what it did before in their eyes, in their simplistic view. And as I was reading some of this, I was browsing, I think it was Facebook, following some threads, and I saw this particular excerpt which actually cemented why I wanted to talk about Agile cults and religions. And essentially, this was an anonymous person describing the fact that there was no point in a lot of the religions fighting with each other because their origins were the same. They came from the same place. They just interpreted things differently and have different ways of viewing and different ways of teaching the same sets of values. And I then started to go into, well, so what real conflict actually exists out there? And of course, I found some fabulous stuff there about how religion, as it propagated around the world, where it propagated to. So if you find this or go to this link, it's a nice little animation that shows the religion spawning and growing, and then it starts to show where the major conflicts in the world have occurred as a result of religion clashing with each other. And it more and more made sense to me the more I looked into it that largely Agile is following a similar pattern. And the thing about Agile, it seems as though for a lot of people they don't really understand the values and principles, and they're trying to create an emulation of what other companies have done. Everyone wants to be an ING. Everyone wants to be a Spotify. They're sending their executives to go over and visit and learn and replicate. And what we've learnt from the cargo cult paradigm is that just reproducing the same steps doesn't actually create the same outcomes that Agile attempts to create. So it's not painting by numbers, although whilst you could do that, it actually requires no skill whatsoever. And there's a question that comes up, so of all of these different frameworks and practices, which one should I use? Should I use the one that's most popular, that's most adopted? Is that what I should do? And the reality is, it's about actually being Agile, not doing Agile. And being Agile actually requires the application of your minds intelligently, applying the right technique, the right practice to the problem or business problem that you have, rather than adopting a specific framework or adopting a specific technique. And I pull up my toolbox picture here because to me it's analogous to, I do an awful lot of DIY. For anybody that there's a few of you that in the room that actually knows me quite well. Before I left Australia, I had a massive tool shed where I probably had, I'd say, somewhere between 15 to 20 different types of hammers, as an example. And I would pull out the right hammer for the right task. I would pull the right saw out for the right task. The way in which I view the Agile landscape is we need to understand what those tools are and when to apply them, and only to apply them to those specific problems. Rather than I'm a Scrum person, or I'm a Scaled Agile Framework person, or I'm a LESS person. I've actually had some interesting discussions in the workplace where people have said that's not Agile, or we don't do that because we do LESS. We do Scaled Scrum. And my reflection on that conversation is, but is that the problem you're trying to solve? Is that the right thing to be using? Use what is the right tool framework for your situation, and more importantly, adapt it. What's interesting about some of the recent statistics that I've seen that have been put in front of me by some of the consultancies like Bain Consultancy was they said that no one, in their opinion, has implemented the Scaled Agile framework in the same way. They've taken the Scaled Agile framework, learned from it, tailored it, and actually implemented it in slight variations. And yes, you're absolutely right, Mant. That's exactly what you're supposed to do. Yes, thank you for the prompt. It is a framework, and that's exactly what you're meant to do with it, is draw from it and apply it. Unfortunately, not many people outside of those that actively know SAFe very well know that it's not a paint by numbers methodology. So let's put the shingle back up on the wall and say we're happy with SAFe as applied that way. I came across this because this is the Oath of Non-Allegiance. This is actually, if any of you had studied Alistair Coburn's work and seen it on his, and gone to his original website, which unfortunately, due to some lack of care and maintenance, is no longer available, so he's now moving to a new site. But one of the key things that I noticed on it was this Oath of Non-Allegiance, and I got really curious about it. And what it essentially is something that resonated with me very deeply. That is, it's an oath where I promise not to discredit anything, any method or technique or practice because of its origin. If it's a sensible thing to use, I want to learn it and apply it. So I'm not going to subscribe to being just a Scrum person, just a SAFe person, just a DAD person. I will borrow from any. And this then led me to look more further into some of the concepts that Alistair's had around Shu-Ha-Ri. Shu, for those of you that are not familiar with the Shu-Ha-Ri, it's actually analogous to martial arts. My best interpretation of it is when you want to learn a martial art, you go to a dojo. You don't go 4 or 5 times. You're a master and you walk away. You actually go, and it's a place of practice where you study underneath a master, and you might learn to punch, and then the next couple of weeks you might learn to kick or to block. And what you're doing is you're actually mastering a set of core skills or techniques. Ha is when you've got to the point that you've mastered them all. But could you go out into the world and best the black belt from the dojo down the street? Arguably no, because they've learnt the same Ha level skills. So reaching a Ri level, which is being able to adapt in the moment based on the context and all the skills that you've learnt to innovate something new, that's how you defeat an opponent. And so when you contextualize that to the methods and techniques of Agile, it's actually learn many, master as many as you can, and then get to a level where you apply them innovatively to the situation of that business or that team. But then, because of the what was it? The phrase, the additional trappings, the additional stuff, complexity that Agile techniques have introduced and have been methodized and commercialized. Alistair got to a point where he said it's getting to the point that the meaning's being lost. We need to go back to actually what are the roots, simplification again. So he added this additional part of his Shu-Ha-Ri paradigm, which is the Kokoro, which is to simplify, to go back to the basics. And that's where the heart of Agile was born. It was through wanting to go back and remind people that fundamentally, regardless of the method or technique or practice or framework, what's at the heart of that is, first of all, collaborate and get together, deliver something, because that's the whole reason why we're around, reflect regularly on what could we do better, and then adapt and improve. And that is at the heart of Agile, regardless of the framework and techniques. I talked about how to apply it in your own context. I throw this up because in the Royal Bank of Scotland, there was an initial, and there still is, a persistent desire to just simply buy a framework. Are we going to go less? Are we going to go dad and put it everywhere? The approach that I took was to say, no, let's look at the business problems that we have, and let's actually draw from the techniques and practices that come from anywhere, and let's construct our own. Now, some might say you're duplicating and inventing. The reality is that we're doing what I used to do with my tool shed, which is I look at the job, I pull out the appropriate tools, and I treat the problem with the appropriate tool. This was actually a fairly easy concept to talk about in Royal Bank of Scotland because they had already learned a technique as part of their leadership change program, which is called the physician's model. And one of the fabulous things about the physician's model is it talks about what are the symptoms. Diagnose the symptoms. So what's the root cause of the symptom? What's your treatment plan? So how might you then go about fixing it? And then how are you going to monitor a shift in the symptoms and then keep circling around? So sounds a little bit like, you know, collaborate, deliver, reflect, and improve in some respects. So this was the culmination of taking a look at the Royal Bank of Scotland's major problems and coming up with a treatment plan that was specific to an organisation of our size and complexity, but attempting to simplify it down to a point that it could be digested and then implemented. So I don't intend to go into what we're doing, except to say that this is a direct product of this paradigm of not wanting to subscribe to a particular religion or sect of Agile, but to actually learn enough about the techniques and practices that are available that allow us to then apply those to our situation. Our little iconography here is my attempt to create a Celtic heart symbology that might resonate with the local Scottish community, especially as I'm told that this is Scottish blue. Can you tell me what the colour is? I can't remember what the colour is. Blue. Pantone 300. Is that what you said? Excellent. Which leads me to my final slide, which was to say, in addition to the 4 values that are embodied in the Agile Manifesto, I have a 5th one for myself, which is I believe that I value mindsets, behaviours guided by values and principles over methods, practices, tools and frameworks. So if the methods, practices and tools and frameworks are eroding my ability to think about applying things consistent with the values of the Agile Manifesto, then I choose not to apply those principles and practices. So that's it. That was essentially the message I wanted to get across. Agile has become complex. It's become complex for a reason. This movement, this community, we're trying to mobilise around going back to the origins and the heart of it so that we can get rid of all the extra trappings around Agile and actually think about the core of what it's about and what we need to do about it. So thank you for listening. Now, I think there was an opportunity to ask some questions if you wanted to. So we've got microphones roaming here and in Glasgow. Terrific. So maybe a question from the room here first, or if there's one in Glasgow. We're in communication with Scott. Can we find out what's going on in the room?
Can we switch back to Zoom?
Now you've asked a complicated question. You remember how long it took us to get going? All right, let's see what we can do.
We can do it from now. We don't need all that.
You can do it?
Yeah. No, we don't need all that anymore. So.
Okay. They're just switching back to Zoom at the moment. Alan, can you hear this all right? This microphone through your ears? Cool. Whilst they're doing that, could I just ask the room? So Tony spoke about the oath and allegiance and kind of not sticking to something that's not working and using the right thing. Can I ask for a show of hands to see if that problem resonates with people in here? Have you ever been in a place where you use Scrum because it's Scrum, but it doesn't work, so you want to use something else, but you use Scrum, so you're using Scrum? Yes? Okay, quite a few. Yeah, more? Glasgow? Oh, got some waving hands. Hi, guys. Kiwi Martin. Cool.
We're through this as a micro, so we should be able to pick up.
Alright, you want to go for it? Speak to that little black box. No, we don't get some hands up. So what was the question?
So are there any questions from the room?
Could Scott rotate his phone 90 degrees?
Hello, Alison Callum. Do you think it's possible to keep the simplicity of Agile in complex organisations, including, I would say, the challenge of offshoring in terms of non-co-location?
I think we can make it a lot simpler than we tried to make it today, is the answer. So when I think about the complexity that we have with offshoring and interacting with teams, using our traditional methods and our traditional communications and teleconferencing and so on, we can make it a lot simpler. An example of which is perhaps we might consider locating complete packages of work just to one location, as an example, so that there isn't multi-region, multi-location development going on, that perhaps you are simply working with one team in one place. So breaking work down and assembling people around that work, those are some of the things that you can do to simplify. I think what we tend to do is, in big organisations, say, well, someone's chosen that we're going to have the testers in Mumbai and the developers in Chennai, and we're going to have the product owners sitting in Edinburgh. It doesn't have to be that way. You can actually challenge that. And so I do think you can simplify even large complex organisations. It's about a belief system. Can it change? That's where most organisations start to run into the major blockers. But you certainly can simplify. We're doing it. You're welcome. Got one here, one there.
Do you think that Agile can be applied to all types of projects? Or to use your analogy of the tool shed, are there times when the tool doesn't fit and you should use a different methodology entirely?
Yeah, so my simple answer is yes, but yes because there is no circumstance that I know of where, for instance, visualizing work couldn't benefit whatever work you're doing. There's no situation that I've been in where the work and communicating with people in tight feedback loops doesn't benefit the work. So if you actually break it down into what are the things that people have codified in techniques and practices, they're universally applicable everywhere. I love telling this story. My children, my 10-year-old daughter and my 12-year-old daughter, we were having the normal trouble of getting them ready for school in the morning. You know, the angst, the where are your shoes, where's your play lunch, what have you done with your homework? Every morning was a stressful situation for them and for us. So I sat them down one evening and I said, look, let's talk about the things that you might need to do to get ready for school in the morning. And let's have a game. Let's write these down on these little hexagon sticky notes. And so they did. In their handwriting, they wrote down, brush teeth. What else do I do? I comb my hair. And they wrote them all down. I said, so how about we put them on this whiteboard in the kitchen, and then in the morning, come out and take a look at what you've got to do, and move this little marker from I've got to do it to I've done it. Right? And gamified it and rewarded at the end to say that if you finish all these things by this time, you get iPad time before school. The morning just became so ridiculously easy. There was no angst, there was no why haven't you done? Self-empowered children using Kanban walls to move the flow of work of the morning routine. And that's my example of how, whilst you might not apply, you know, all the techniques, you can choose techniques to virtually any circumstance and apply it. My builders in Australia, when I was doing the renovations of my home, for the work that I couldn't do because it was a heavy construction work, they really had a hard time getting used to the fact that every morning I would come out and say, right guys, what did we finish yesterday? What have we got planned today? So the bits that we didn't finish yesterday, we're planning to do those today? Right, so there's virtually every scenario where you can draw from one or more of the practices and apply it. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. Did you have a question?
Yeah. Is it possible to implement Agile in a project when we were halfway through in waterfall model?
So is it possible to implement Agile halfway through a waterfall? I would answer anything's possible. And I'll answer that with something more meaningful. At one point in my career, I was asked to take a role in the business side of Telstra in Australia. Telstra is like British Telecom here. And in joining the business unit, I inherited about 4 or 5 projects that were in flight. And the reason why I joined the business unit was because they found that technology was actually not delivering as quickly as they wanted. So they were effectively creating a mini shadow IT inside their business unit, and I was brought in to head this up. Of the 4 or 5 projects I inherited, 2 of them I shut down immediately, much to the horror of the project managers and everyone else, because I looked at it and looked at the trajectory of it, the value it was delivering, and I said, you're not going to realise this value, and things have moved on to the point that it's actually the wrong project to be doing, so let's hand the money back and we're going to refocus on these other things. Which of course sent people into a tailspin, because the system is, if you put a business case in, if you seek the funds for it, you're then, if you're granted the funds, your reputation hinges upon delivering the scope to the time frame, to the quality level. So it's a paradigm that we've institutionalised in roles like project and project management, which is quite a shock to people when you say, I know that's what we said we would do, but it doesn't make sense anymore, so I'm going to shut it down. The other couple of projects, which were waterfall, I then took a look at what they had left to do, and there was one that was most important of all of these. I said, okay, so what stage are we up to with this? Well, we've been working on it for a year now. Okay, good. And what have we produced? This 250-page RDD, Requirements Definition Document. I said, okay, that's it? Yes. And when's it meant to be delivered by? Oh, in 4.5 months from now. So we spent a year in waterfall process, of which we now have run out of runway, of which I would have stopped that one too, had it not been a little chat that the executive director said took me in to have, which was along these lines. Tony, I've heard so much about you. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. So we've got this product that we need to get to market in February, and I need to hear that you can guarantee we'll do it. So I said, okay, let me go and read the RDD and I'll come back and I'll give you my opinion. And I came back and I said, yes, we can do this. We will release on the day. And she said, okay, great. And I said, but there are some things that I need. The things that I need are, I'm going to start to pull together everybody that's required to get this into production. So all the business process people, all of the developers, all the external vendors, I need to have them all working in sync with me every day. They're going to complain. This will feel foreign and uncomfortable to them, but they're going to complain. I need to know that I have the air cover from you to ignore the noise and to focus them on the work. And then what I did is I pulled those people together and said, so let's go through what is the minimum we need to get live on the 14th to generate income that then gives us the license to continue to build on top of that as we go. So we're going to shed all of the non-essential requirements and we're going to build this and showcase it to ourselves every 2 weeks. That way we'll know we're on track, or we'll know that what we thought we would do is no longer able to be done. That brought that project, waterfall project, in on time with $2 million worth of pre-sales and has gone on to have $500 million now in that product line. So yes, you can take a project that's waterfall mid-flight and change it, but under certain conditions. I had the license to take control. In most situations, you don't necessarily have that license to be able to do it. So yes, you can, but it's under certain circumstances.
Any more in Edinburgh before we pass over to Glasgow? No. Glasgow.
We have no audio there.
Okay, so give us a big thumbs up if you can hear us now. Right, awesome. Tony, I was at a talk Gary Fleming did in Lean Agile Glasgow during the summer. He did this talk which kind of really struck a chord with me, where he talks about some of the crutches or training wheels that we use in Agile, and obviously some of these are frameworks, things like Scrum, even things like some of our ceremonies like retrospectives and so on. He talks about it's been useful for teams who are adopting Agile at the beginning until they get their bearings. So really when you're in that kind of shoe early half stage. And what you talked about there, really it struck me that having enough people, particularly in an organisation the size of RBS, in the re or Kokoro stage to allow them to kind of like adapt tools that are right for the job at the right time can be really quite a tall ask. So I guess my question to you is, what has your experience been of trying to apply the principles and what you're talking about, but in an organisation where you have loads of people who are all at different stages on that journey in their Agile learning and adoption? I see that one.
So it's actually it is an art and a science to know where you draw the line between creating something that is a codified technique to help people build up foundation skills, to then introducing the concept, now we've taught you that, we actually want you to only apply that when it's actually purposeful to apply it. It's quite an art and a science. So our experience at RBS, fortunately, Scrum is pretty much a solid foundation of virtually every technique, every framework, and it has a lot of really good practices in it. They're the staples. That's like learning the basic recipes. So that was one of the things where we said, go ahead, use that model, go and learn it. Even our executives have learnt it. But the art is then knowing at what moments do you then say to our executives, so now that you've learnt Scrum, let me actually introduce you to the reason why Scrum won't work wholesale in our situation. And so those have been the interesting conversations that I've had. And the way that I did that was that map that I showed you, by talking them through what are the business problems, so what are the symptoms of the organisation, what are the root causes of those symptoms, what's the treatment, and then how we're going to monitor it. That actually helped them go, okay, so I understand Scrum in itself doesn't cover any of those things. Scrum doesn't cover how enterprise funding works. Doesn't attempt to. So the point is that it's useful to leverage building block capabilities and those frameworks to help people learn and understand. But then you've got to be, again, contextually, in RBS, it was a case of then knowing at what point do we then intervene and say, now that we've taught you that, we now need to teach you that it's not that simple and here's what we need to do differently. So does that help answer the question? Excellent, thank you. Any other questions from Glasgow?
I think that might work, by the way, Scott.
Can you hear me, Mother?
Yes.
Yes. Hey, that's better. Any more questions in the room? Here we go. Is it a sound question?
Good to see you. So my question is, I think this chat kind of highlights that within the community there's a feeling that Agile is broken. And one of the kind of movements or frameworks or communities that I've kind of started to really follow online is modern Agile. And I just kind of resonated when I seen the PDF that Laz had sent on about this, about not so much a reinvention but potentially a bit of an Agile reset. And I was just wondering where modern Agile potentially fits into what we've just heard tonight.
So if modern Agile is what I'm familiar with, it's an analogous breakdown. It's very, very similar. There's a lot of parallels between what Alistair has tried to codify as the heart of Agile and what has then been codified as modern Agile. It seems to have very, very similar parallels in the way it's been focused in on what are the heart of the things. They happened, interestingly, in parallel virtually at the same time. So my answer is, how does it fit? I would study both. I would get involved in both. I would learn the learnings that either of those two communities give you and use it intelligently in your situation.
Can I add a bit in there? When we were talking to Damien about the meetups that were happening in Australia, apparently they started out in a slapdown in the pub between Heart of Agile and Modern Agile. And that was kind of like, when they started comparing the different values and that's when the community really started. I'm a member, I joined both, I follow both Slack groups. There's a lot of similar sentiment there. Not sure what my wife's doing, but yeah, I think fellow travellers on the same path.
If I could add a little there as well, from my understanding of reading into both, modern Agile is more of maybe an evolution on the manifesto and what they can see based on learnings through the last 17 years, whereas Heart of Agile is more bringing it back to the core of what was written 17 years ago.
So I guess my advice based on my talk today is don't try and latch onto one or the other. Right? Float like a butterfly or a bee from one source to another. Glean from it what is meaningful to you. Join as many communities as make sense to you. It's not an or, it's an and.
Cracking place to stop that. I think that's a lovely final sentence. Thank you, Tony.
Thanks.
We're just going to take a 5-minute break there, folks. 7 minutes because it's 8 minutes past, and it's quarter past, and it's just a bit nicer. So go and have some cold pizza, some beers, cokes, use the facilities, whichever. See you back at quarter past. Thank you.
There may be some others yet to come in, but we will kick off. Glasgow, are you good? One moment. Okay, copy. All right.
Testing.
Hello. We can hear you.
Yeah.
You all good over that side?
Yeah, but the beer lasted.
Okay. What am I wanting to talk about now? So before we kick off this side, I'd like Alan from Product Forge. He has something to mention that I completely forgot to do beforehand, so apologies. But here he is now. Thank you.
Yes. I'll keep this super brief. You may know Product Forge from all the live streaming, but we organise hackathons. We're organising Europe's largest health hackathon here in Edinburgh, Glasgow. It'll be from the 21st to 24th of February. It's an open event. We'll be bringing together people like you who are interested in creating positive change and large, complicated systems like the health service. We'll have entrepreneurs, developers, designers, people who work in the health service, all the way from doctors and nurses to data analysts to the chief medical officer. We'll be prototyping 50 new products around a variety of themes, including wellness and wearables and data-driven cancer care. If you're interested, you check us out at productforge.io, or if you don't like using the internet, I have flyers. Again, sorry.
Cool. Thanks, Alan. So
we missed all of what Alan said. Which hackathons was he talking about?
Edinburgh.
Edinburgh.
You guys will be interested.
We'll hand you a flyer.
Excellent.
Okay, apologies for the gremlins earlier. This is the first time we have done a live stream community event, and we've also got Zoom and Product Forge and all bits and pieces going together and things not working on the other side. So thank you for bearing with us on that. We will.
Next time, can we use children and animals as well?
Yeah. We will reflect on that and suggest some experiments to improve on next time. I also realised when I was sat back there, I'm here wanting to build this community of people that know each other and have an inkling that I may have completely forgotten to introduce myself at the start. So if you don't know me, that's fine. So I am Rob Lockwood. I am here today hosting this Heart of Agile Scotland community launch. Thank you. Thank you.
What is currently available and is looking for work.
Cool. So the next thing we're going to look at is how we're going to collaborate as a community. So we're going to have a bit of a breakout session. I would show you this, but I don't have it on the television right now. But it is the diamond of the Heart of Agile. Collaborate at the top, deliver, reflect, improve. This evening we're just going to look at one of those quadrants. We're going to look at the collaborate side. I don't want to fill your heads with too much at one go, and we're at the start of something, so I'd like to start at the start, if that's all right with everybody. And with that, we're going to look at how we're going to collaborate. So to do so, I'd like everyone just to spend a minute just by themselves thinking in their head about collaboration. Independent of anything else going on just now, how will we increase collaboration or collaborate better as a community? Granted, we've only just started, so better maybe not the right word, but that. Everyone happy with the question? How do we collaborate better as a community? So you're going to have a minute to think about, and then we're going to split you out. Got a face there. You lost.
No.
Okay.
We should play a different game.
1 minute.
long minute.
Okay, thank you. Now I'd like for everyone to find someone that they didn't meet earlier on and haven't met before as well, if that's a thing anymore, after all the people you've met tonight, and discuss with them your thoughts on how we collaborate as a community. So just get up, find someone, and we'll give you 3 minutes, 1 just to introduce yourself, and 2 to discuss your thoughts. And whilst we're doing this, Scott, Alan has tweeted you the link for their hackathon that you can share on that site.
I'm going to work from home tomorrow. Now, the point you raised is kind of trying to think. So, on a sea level, it might be, I don't know, on a C6 level, there are that's always the case. This has changed now. Well, there are.
In Glasgow, we have our hand up.
Yes, and we've stopped virtually.
He's looking.
Oh,
he's a screen.
you see that?
He's putting his head out.
Thanks, Marco.
So, I didn't know that's the best.
I'll put my hand down again now.
Nice, thank you, folks. Now, in your pairs, please find another pair. 1, 2, 4, all, if you can see to 4. And in these quads, we're going to spend 6 minutes discussing. You got that in Glasgow, you have 6 minutes discussing.
6 minutes discussion.
In quads. Sorry, everyone. Share your thoughts with others.
Yes, we don't have a 25 plus years. No, have done sort of large scale sort of cross company, not PI planning, I would say, but and everything. Look at the whole balance of it. We just do our intent will do a step back and check what is happening. We're facing multiple requirements now, and that is even more serious in
Oh, let's go.
Glasgow in the house.
Thank you. Awesome. Thank you very much, guys. Collaborating about collaboration. Now I'd like everyone just to take a seat, but take away a couple of things you've learned in that group. If you want a minute before you sit down just to discuss a couple of things about that, that's fine. Then we're just going to go around the room and get some people to shout out some ideas for how we are going to collaborate better, or at all, as a community.
Kaylee dances.
Beg your pardon?
Kaylee dances.
Ah, sound.
Kaylee dances.
Yeah. Cool. No, that's a +1 from here. And usually I'd write notes with a pencil, but this time we have a video.
Like old people.
But fortunately, I'm not there yet, so we have video. Cool. If everyone just wants to take a seat, and literally just raise your hands. I'll point the microphone at you and tell me a way that we are going to collaborate as a community. We're going to start in Glasgow this time. She's out in Edinburgh this time. So Glasgow folk, if you'd like to grab the mic, grab the mic and give us a comment, that would be fantastic.
Hands up, the groups. You know the stuff you've been talking about? Okay, I'll make it simple. We're going to look for 10 things. If we don't get 10 things, you don't get home for Christmas. So, Martin, again. Introduce yourself, who you are, and what your group was thinking about.
So it's Martin here. Ironically, I think one of the key things, given that Scott just had a problem getting anybody to take the mic, was we talked about trying to overcome the inertia of people communicating with each other, and you know, perhaps having some kind of shared goal or some kind of exercise. Probably not ecstasy tablets, Scott. Just you can hear that suggestion in Edinburgh. But yeah, some way of kind of getting people together. You know, we talked about whether using virtual platforms might be easier, but trying to get people together at the same time. So maybe, you know, if you're using Slack, creating conference calls to actually bring people together at the same time, at the same place, to talk about things. Yeah, and getting people just to kind of open up and giving them some kind of exercises. Some of the exercises that probably a lot of us will kind of use with new teams and so on, just to get them over that initial inertia of nobody wants to speak or maybe thinks that their opinion or experience isn't as valid as the other people in the community, because it absolutely is. And you know, and everybody has their own thing, and every single person will have things that when they tell other people in the community, other people will value that and learn from it, because it will be, you know, it will be a little bit different to what they've experienced themselves, and it all adds together. So I think that was some of the themes that the fair guys, the themes we were talking about. Cool. Pass on.
Thank you.
Hi, so I'm Andy. So one of the things that we were talking about that Martin hasn't already covered is around reporting back, so the value that we take away from here and we've implemented elsewhere, and the wider discussion back in our day job.
Cracking, thank you. Go on, Alan.
Hi, so I think the key things that we were talking about. Hello, myself Amajit from RBS. So within this group, I think one of the key things we were talking about is actually getting the buy-in from the management and getting the empowerment for the team to do what they're actually meant to be doing. I think it's just one of the key things for collaboration. We talk about a lot being in the team and actually making all the decisions, but what doesn't happen is from the management point of view, they pretty much kind of tell us, right, this is the way it should be, and get in their time as well. So I think from us, the better way to collaborate would be empowering the team to make decisions, and also if they've committed to attend even a 15 minutes of the daily stand-up in the morning, then they make the time off doing that. Otherwise, there won't be any work getting done on that day.
Lovely, thank you. Can we get one more from Glasgow? I appreciate we're running slightly out on time.
So we also thought that maybe instead of Googling something, I don't know how to do something or what methodology to use, what tool to pick, maybe just to use one of the collaboration platforms actually to put a question out to the team. I certainly know myself, sometimes I spend hours looking for that perfect slide or a picture to present something, and actually it would be good just to say, well, I'm looking something to represent such and such. Does somebody have something useful?
Perfect, thank you.
Sorry, and I'm Branka.
Cool, thank you Glasgow. Thank you very much. And anybody in here?
So we talked about psychological safety and how to communicate as a group, but also about the split between experience for newbies and more experienced users, and how useful it would be to have support, encourage people to communicate and share their knowledge and experience. Is that reasonable? Yeah. So if it would be possible to get everybody to communicate or post something to create a safe space, so it's clear to anybody joining the group how safe the space is, that would be a really good way of encouraging people to join and collaborate, rather than just having the same people always posting things. But it is always really useful to have the really experienced users posting their knowledge for us newbies to listen into. Oh, sorry. I'm Rona. Cheers.
I'm Graham. As a corollary to that, it might be useful if experienced and leaders in the community actually posted some failure. That would be a good way to establish psychological safety in a space like this.
Definitely. Yeah, acknowledging failure is a very important part of building that kind of environment. Oh, sorry, I'm looking at. Go for it, right?
Is this on? Hey, I'm Cameron. Oh, that is very loud. Yeah, so first of all, we really liked this activity. We all kind of agreed that sometimes with these things we can be a bit socially awkward. So having forced communication like this at all events would be really useful, because it would make you actually go talk to people rather than just sit and stand with a beer in the corner. The other thing we wanted on a similar idea was kind of smaller groups. Perhaps breaking out, doing more meetups where we break out in small groups and do like going coffee style discussions. Or another idea that one of us had was to do more frequent but smaller meetups. So every week people get together in a pub or a coffee shop. You don't need to come every week. You can have a conversation with just 5 or 6 people, and that's perhaps more useful because you can talk more freely in a smaller group.
I'm Ian from RBS. 2 people in my group left, so I'm not sure what that says. She's still there. Basically, I want to echo what the guy at the back said. Sometimes it's difficult when you walk into a room, so even if we do nothing different, apart from some facilitated conversations, like 2 minutes to talk to someone, change another someone else, change someone else, that would be great.
Thank you. Okay, I think we have time for one more.
Hi, I'm Shane. So we sort of touched on people that aren't able to make it to the meetups, so maybe they've got commitments at home. How do we link them in? We've got people in Glasgow at the minute, linked in from Zoom. So you're using Zoom? Or, yeah. Could we enable people to link in that aren't able to make it to the actual sites? Is that possible?
My wife is here and is going to kill me for this. Building on two of the things we've just heard, I will happily host a weekly Zoom lean coffee one evening of somebody choose which evening, but it will be that evening every week consistently, so you never have to ask, is it this week? Because the answer will always be yes.
Thank you, Martin. We'll hold you to that.
Just to mention, if anyone does, so we're live streaming tonight as well, so you go to catch that just on YouTube, and if you are watching the live stream, there is a live comments box, so if you did have anything, I keep an eye on it, the corner of my eye, so if you were watching it remotely, then you could ask a question, and I can relay that to the room.
Thank you, thank you. So for those in Glasgow, Alan was just mentioning, he's live streaming through YouTube, and there are the live comments that come through, that anything that comes through he can mention to us, because he is monitoring those throughout the evening. That's awesome, guys. Thank you very much. We've got some great feedback coming out of there. As I said earlier on, we do have a Slack workspace set up. I was going to kind of put it on the screen or write it down or something, but it's super long. Maybe I'll just put it on Meetup for those that attended. If you want to,
yeah, that's a good idea.
If you don't want to, that's fine. But that will be the place where we can continuously collaborate with each other. We can ask the questions. We can be an experienced person or inexperienced person. You're not going to tell the difference. We can set up things like Martin's super special weekly lean coffees. I'm getting glares.
I'm calling that now.
and everything like that. But all the other feedback we captured on video. I'm going to write it down later. I'm going to share that on that Slack workspace. And I think this is the start of something pretty powerful.
Wonderful.
Okay. So where was I? I think that's it really for tonight. Thank you everybody for coming. Thank you, Tony, for speaking. Had a few discussions throughout, and everyone enjoyed it. People were asking for the slide deck and everything. I'm not sure if you can share that, but we can do something, I'm sure. Thank you very much for Laz and the guys at Skyscanner for not only the location in Edinburgh and the location in Glasgow, but also for the beer and pizza. So that's also thanks to Cameron and Ian and Chris, who helped with all the tech issues and helped with facilitating this. Thank you to Craig as well for helping earlier on. Thank you to Andy for that artwork, which is fantastic. And thank you to Alan and Product Forge for the live streaming and recording of this event.
Can we do a fist of 5?
I think we can. Why don't you facilitate that, Scott, on that side?
Scott, just
because my voice has got that echoing, booming voice.
Hold on, we got Richard saying something.
I think we also need to say thank you to Rob as well.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, fist of 5 voting. Right, you're going to vote with your 5 fingers. Okay, we're going to all vote at the same time, so you can't be influenced with anyone. Okay. If you didn't think tonight was any good at all and you've just wasted your time, right, go with no fingers. Okay. If you thought it was a wonderful event and it's been the highlight of your year, go with 5 fingers, and wherever you are in between those two returns after leaving, yeah, on the count of 3, from when you put your fingers up, okay? It's a fist of 5. So 1, 2, 3. Excellent. Good. You got any 2 fingers there?
Only 1, mate.
That was Craig.
Awesome, thanks for that, guys. Well, that wraps up this evening. Peace out, everybody. Have a lovely evening, and see you next time.
Folks, if you can bring your drinks and stuff back to the tables in the back, that'd be great. Thank you very much.
Nice to meet you. I'd love to hear your jokes.
Thank you very much.